today with Bob Glennon.
Hello, I'm the private lands biologist who covers southeastern Virginia, and today we're going to walk a little bit through Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. The refuge is basically a very large wetland area, but even with just being a wetland area, there are different habitat types that have different benefits for wildlife. So we're going to start in a little cypress section. There's probably more bottomland hardwoods here than cypress, but they have some really nice cypress stands. So the stand we're going to look at right now is probably has an average diameter probably about somewhere between 4 and 6 inches. There's some larger trees here, but not huge trees yet. Has a really nice understory of fringe sedge, and because it's not a pure stand, they haven't done any spraying in here. We have mixtures of sweet gum and red maple and American hornbeam, all of which have some kind of wildlife benefit. So the cypress, again, are relatively young, so they haven't started producing seed yet, but eventually they will produce seed, and long-term plan would be to manage them here long enough to get some really good cavities in them. And once they get cavities, we'll have wood ducks nesting, bats nesting, and other cavity dwelling creatures, even things like possums and raccoons nesting in them. The sedges here are fringe sedges. This is just one of the earliest blooming sedges. These just started this week. You can see like the name says, little fringes on them. They will all bloom eventually. They will all produce seed, and whatever waterfowl are in here will come by and either pick them off or get them out of the water. This area does flood. I was here a month ago, and this was all flooded, and it'll flood again this winter. So when the birds are in here migrating in the spring and the fall and through the winter, there will be birds here. And whenever you see dabbling ducks with their rear ends in the air, basically they're harvesting seed off the forest floor. So this will be a really good area for them to be harvesting fringe sedge seed. Over on the other side, we have red maple, and again, a really fantastic plant for wildlife. Produces a lot of browse. Deer eat an awful lot of red maple sprouts. So if you don't have any other kind of food available to deer, there's always red maple sprouts. It flowered about 2 months ago. It's a very early blooming plant. Does produce a lot of those little seeds with the helicopters on them, so they're all gone too. But they're again great food for not only songbirds, but you'll have a lot of squirrels especially will go up and get them as they mature. So it's a really great plant for all wildlife. It also tends to be pretty soft wooded. So the wood does get a lot of cavities in it. And again, as the trees get older, you'll have songbirds living in them. You'll have woodpeckers pecking on them for bugs. You get large red maples, and you will have squirrels, raccoons, possums living inside the tree. I have seen trees that look more like apartment houses than the actual trees. Once they get old and start to decompose, decay, they become literally apartment houses for wildlife. The other plants that we have in here, we have sweet gums on the edges where we don't have as much flooding during the winter. Sweet gums get those little balls that you hate to step on, and believe it or not, each one of those balls probably has 100 or so seeds in them, and you will get a lot of songbirds picking off the seeds inside those balls. And if you have an open grown stand, you can just watch them all day long. Birds literally hang upside down on a tree, and they pick those little seeds out one at a time. The other plant we have on the edge here in the little sunlit areas is a plant called American hornbeam. The American hornbeam is also called ironwood or musclewood. Has a texture of a bark that looks like somebody's bicep. But it's another plant that blooms very early in the spring, makes a lot of seeds, sort of like a maple seed. Um, and again, by this time of year, uh, starting to mature, and the birds and the squirrels are starting to pick it all off already.
So, noticing so different things that animals, and of course, wildlife is a generic term, but different foods that are already that you've already mentioned are browse. So that would primarily be your ruminants like your deer and things with sharp teeth. Uh, but I would imagine, and then other things eat the foliage, and that could be larvae as well, right? So. Uh,
Yeah, we'll have a lot of caterpillars in here. Um, right here at Dismal Swamp, um, unfortunately or unfortunately, because the area is very wet and the soil is organic, we don't have a lot of oak trees. So a lot of people will praise the value of oak trees, especially for caterpillars. So we don't have the number of oak species here that a lot of people do, where we have wetlands that are mineral soil and not organic soil. But obviously, there's a lot of benefits. We do have sections of this refuge where we do have mineral soil, and we do have oak trees that are adapted to wetland environments.
So we were talking earlier, and we were talking about Nyssa species, Tupelo. So that tends to grow also with cypress in the wet.
Woodard Tupelo and ball cypress generally are considered part of the same plant community. The stand here on the refuge was restored, and I think they planted mostly cypress. So even though I know there is Woodard Tupelo in here, there's not a lot of it. Tupelo is very valuable, especially if you have animals that need fruit. And Tupelo berries kind of look like small grapes. So in this part of the world, we do have a sizable bear population. The bears will climb the trees and be eating the Tupelo berries off. Part of the trade-off here, especially on this refuge, is that because we don't have oak trees, the bears that normally live on oak acorns don't have the acorns, so they really depend on all the plants here that produce berries, and Tupelo is one of those plants that they do depend on quite a bit. And some very nice shrubs. The big attraction here for wildlife is the diversity of shrubs and vines that we have. So we stopped at this one plant that we just saw. This is called coastal sweet pepper bush, and these are last year's seeds. And when you see them when they're first ripe, you think it might be a berry, but actually it's just a seed covered with a skin. But the big attraction from a holistic wildlife point of view is each one of those seeds represents a very, very large white flower. So these long strands of seeds are white flowers, usually in July and August, and very attractive to both bees and butterflies, and they're very, very fragrant. So if you have a stand somewhere near you, and there are some stands here at Great Dismal Swamp that are extremely fragrant, and as soon as you turn down the access road to get to the end of the trail, you can smell them. So you can tell why the bees and the butterflies are so attracted to them. Obviously, the seeds are still here, so they're not terribly palatable. There are a lot of other things in the woods that the birds and squirrels and possums and stuff will eat. So they do eat them. They're just not a preferred food.
All right, I'm on. So here we got a few more species, don't we, Bob? I see.
This is part of the understory in this bottomland hardwood area, and again, it's a very diverse understory. And although the wildlife do use the red maple and the swamp tupelo here, they get an awful lot of benefit out of these shrubs and vines. So this is a high bush blueberry, and again, it is finished blooming, made seed. The fruit's already been picked off, but the plants here, and most of those plants are pretty dense, so it makes good cover for the birds to nest in and hide in. Have a lot of greenbrier, and again, This particular one has not bloomed, but I know that some other places on the refuge that I have gotten pictures of the flowers, so they will also make fruit later on, and that fruit is pretty appetizing to the birds, and they'll pick them off. Probably the biggest benefit of having the greenbrier is when they twine around other plants and make big tangles. It makes really great cover from predators like foxes, and if you have a lot of dogs and cats in the neighborhood, dogs and cats will not go into that greenbrier tangle and chase birds and bunnies. In the back there we have muscadine grapes, and again that's a native grape. Does not have your typical grape leaf that you think of when you think about wine grapes, but that is the native grape. Grows well in wetlands, does flower profusely, does make a lot of fruit here. And again, the fruit is very palatable. So we have some of the fruit and some of the seed here that is not eaten right away, and we have other fruit like the muscadine that as soon as they're ripe, there are going to be birds and raccoons and possums all over it, and they're going to clean it up almost immediately. Okay.
So with your timing of things that flower and timing of things that produce soft mass, let's say, what's the goal of that with different types of wildlife?
The goal of most plants, whether you're trying to manage for them or whether you're trying to establish them from scratch, is to kind of set the table like a temporal buffet. So you want a variety of plants that are going to bloom one after the other, and then they're going to make fruit or seed one after the other. So the idea is not to have everything in bloom at the same time and everything with fruit at the same time. The idea is to have this kind of rolling buffet where the animals can come by, and for 2 or 3 weeks they're going to eat muscadine grapes, and for 2 or 3 weeks they're going to eat greenbrier berries, and for 2 or 3 weeks they're going to eat blueberries. It applies both to the pollinator critters as well as to the critters that eat the fruit, eat the seeds eventually.
All right, so here we got a couple more plants. We have some blackberry and devil's walking stick. What are the advantages of those, Bob?
The devil's walking stick, it does make a large head of flowers in the summer. Bees and butterflies do work it really diligently, and then once the fruit's produced, if you want a good picture of the fruit, you better be there quick because the fruit gets eaten almost immediately. Again, typically it occurs on roadsides and in forests and along the highways, but so it does need quite a bit of sunlight to thrive. But it's not a great cover plant, but it is a fantastic pollinator plant and also a good fruit plant.
And how about our ubiquitous blackberries? It seem to be ubiquitous, especially in the forest around any sort of disturbance.
Blackberries, for my mind, even though they do flower and they do make a lot of fruit, the cover value is almost unmatched. Whether you're a rabbit or whether you're a quail or whether you're a grassland songbird, you get a good blackberry patch and maintain it and keep it in good shape. That's the best place to be hiding when the coyotes and the foxes and the dogs and the cats come calling for you. Obviously, it's a very early blooming shrub, so there are a lot of opportunities for pollinating bees and butterflies to feed on them. The fruit is made pretty quickly, but again, like a lot of very sweet, very juicy fruit, it gets eaten pretty quickly. So it's not a persistent fruit, but come another month or two, and there'll be a great fruit source for just about everything. Everybody thinks about the birds, but you'll get raccoons and possums and other creatures going out up into the blackberry patch and picking the fruit. We're still at the Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. This is part of their pine stand. They do manage their pines intensively with prescribed burning to try to reduce the fuel load and also maintain a really good understory layer. Most people don't give pine trees a lot of credit for habitat value, but when you manage this understory very well, the understory becomes a big part of the picture. Obviously, the pine trees do produce pine cones, and the different animals eat the pine cone seeds. We do have animals that do live in the trees once they get cavities in them. Some live in the branches when they get dense enough. But for most creatures, the real value is in the understory. We have a variety of plants here. We have some shrubs, some sapling trees, and some native grasses here. A lot of the green cover right in front of us is a plant called slender wood oats. It's a native grass that only grows on saturated soils. If we were on a more well-drained soil, we'd probably see things like broom sedge and upland blue stems. But here, this slender wood oats is kind of the dominant understory grass. We're going to move and see some of the greenbrier and some of the muscadine grapes that we saw on some of the other sites. So right here this is one of the many greenbriers. It's not a round leaf greenbrier like a lot of people see. It's a halbert-leaved greenbrier. But again, just like all the greenbriers, it does flower, produces food for mostly small bees, and then it does produce a fruit of small berry, and that berry is eaten pretty quickly by usually songbirds, sometimes by raccoons and possums.
Is this a wild strawberry here?
And again, just like any other strawberry, they will bloom. Don't produce a large strawberry. It's going to take a lot of strawberries to make a pie or make jam, but it does produce a fruit.
Please make sure you join us in 2 weeks for another informative installment of 15 Minutes in the Forest. Have a joyful journey.